distinguished ladies and gentlemen. And,
good morning, Chairman.
VP, a pleasure.
Good morning. Good morning to you.
My name is you.
Alrighty, so again, good morning to everyone, and I acknowledge the distinguished friends. Pardon me? Are we ready to make a start?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you. So, good morning again to everyone, and I specifically would like to acknowledge the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, all of the various ministers, of course our Vice Chancellor, and the chairpersons and members of the campus and University Technical, as well as the advisory and grant committees, and other distinguished ladies and gentlemen. The meeting is officially called to order. And I'll indicate here from the onset that we'll try to be as efficacious as possible in dispensing of the agenda items. Ordinarily, it would take us a number of hours, probably up to 7 p.m. in the evening. It'll be good if at least we can conclude, I'd say between 5 and 6, assuming that we can be very succinct with our comments, but at the same time to dispense of the agenda items with sufficient clarity. So without any further ado, I'm going to invite the Bursar and Chief Financial Officer, Mrs. Andrea McNeish, to do a welcome and also to propose the adoption of the program agenda. So over to you, Mrs. McNeish.
Thanks, Prime Minister. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Andrea McNeish, University Bursar and Chief Financial Officer of the University of the West Indies. The meeting is now called to order at 9:03 a.m. Jamaica time. A warm welcome to the 2024 annual meetings of the Campus and University Grants Committees, at which the budgets of the University of the West Indies, including the 5 campuses, the University Center, the Science Research Center, and the University Hospital of the West Indies for the biennium 2024-2026 will be presented for approval. I wish to acknowledge at this time the Honorable Gaston Browne, Chairman, University Grants Committee, and Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Corporate Governance and Public-Private Partnerships, Antigua and Barbuda. Honorable Gaston Browne will be our chair today. The Right Honorable Dr. Ralph Gonzalez, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The Honorable Com Imber, former chairman of the University Grants Committee and Minister of Finance, Trinidad and Tobago. Professor Sir Hilary Beckles, Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies. Ministers of Finance and Ministers of Education, serving as chairpersons and members of the campus and university grants committees, permanent secretaries, and financial secretaries serving as chairpersons and members of the technical advisory committee. Other government officials, pro-vice chancellors, campus principals, deputy principals, university registrar, and other members of the executive management team of the university. Deputy Chief Financial Officer, Campus Bursars, Campus Registrars, and other representatives of the university, Acting Chief Executive Officer, Medical Chief of Staff, Senior Director of Finance, and other representatives of the University Hospital of the West Indies, members of the Planning, Technical Support, and Administrative Support teams of the university. A very special welcome to all first-time attendees from the governance, the UII and the UHII. The full list of attendees would have been circulated with the papers. If your name is missing from the list, please feel free to type your name and title in the chat and we will add accordingly. Thank you. I would like to extend apologies for absence for the government of the Virgin Islands. There are some ministers of finance and education who are unable to attend. However, they are ably represented by their nominees. Apologies were also received from our Pro-Vice Chancellor Graduate Studies and Research, Professor Aldrin Henry Lee, and Pro-Vice Chancellor Global Affairs, Sandra Maynard, who are unavoidably absent. There is representation today from 16 of our 17 contributing countries, and this shows the commitment of the governments to the UWI and the UHWI. The agendas are as set out before us. We made a slight adjustment this morning as the Mona campus made a request to go first in order to treat with an emergency during the meeting as was originally planned, the schedule that we had before. If there are no further changes, I ask that the agendas for the respective meetings be adopted. At today's meetings, we'll be reviewing and approving the biennium budgets of the university and university hospital as well as the Seismic Research Center. For the biennium 2024-26, at the meetings of the technical advisory committees held on March 5 and 6, all budgets were reviewed as fair and reasonable. It was noted too that some countries had no commitments to make at that time or could have given an opinion as their cabinets had to meet to make that determination on their own budgets. We are hopeful that those discussions would have been completed and that the grants committee will be able to give approval today, and we will receive some commitments during the day. Following the reviews and approvals, the budgets will be forwarded to the annual business meeting of the University Council for ratification and for implementation for the new academic year, August 1, 2024 as our start date. The figures will also be used to assist us in the tuition fee calculations and will be guided as to the level of fees that should be charged, even although we try to make the fees affordable and those might not necessarily be the level of increases. Other matters relevant to the enhancements of UWI will also be discussed at the UGC in the afternoon, and these will be mainly those matters arising from the last meeting, and whichever matters that we are open to from this meeting as we go along, then we will be discussing as well. I'd like to now do a paper check. You should have from the repository the agendas, list of attendees, terms of reference for the grants committees, and the biennial budgets of all the entities and their memoranda on estimates of needs for 2024-2026. We look forward to a very rewarding meeting or set up meetings today, and I now hand over to the Honorable Gaston Browne, Chairman of the University Grants Committee and Prime Minister and Minister of Finance and Corporate Governance and Public-Private Partnerships, Antigua and Barbuda, to continue with the meeting.
Thank you, Excellency. And I acknowledge the protocol that was established by our bursar, distinguished bursar. As indicated by the bursar and Chief Financial Officer, we meet today to review and approve the budgets and memorandum of needs for the biennium 24 to 26 for all the UWI entities and the University Hospital, as well as to get an update on the various government's contributions. We are all aware of the challenges, including the financial challenges confronting the various UWI entities and the University Hospital, which are primarily a function of the fiscal challenges of member governments to adequately meet their commitments to the UWI entities on a timely basis. However, we are equally aware of the quintessential importance of UWI in building the human resource capabilities of the region in achieving global competitiveness and resilient prosperity for our people. Despite the funding challenges, UWI continues to stand out as a most resilient higher education institution a beacon of Caribbean integration, and certainly the foremost institution in the intellectual development of our people. It is to the credit of all stakeholders, to include the faculty and staff, and their sterling contribution, that UWI continues to maintain a commendable ranking in the top 5% of all universities globally. It was Malcolm X who said that education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. While Nelson Mandela is reputed to have said that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Evidently, UWI has been the foremost institution in preparing our people for the future, especially our youth. And it is the aspiration of our people to make their impact global, or to impact the impact on the global stage. So it means therefore that regional policymakers must prioritize the funding and expansion of UWI in achieving the aspirations of our people to provide global leadership, despite the fiscal challenges that they may have to confront from time to time. I would have said to this august body during a prior meeting that UWI cannot shrink itself into greatness. Therefore, all stakeholders, and I emphasize all stakeholders, especially member governments, are required to ensure the sustainable growth and development of UWI, to ensure the advancement of our people. A recent analysis would have shown that contribution of member governments, or contributions for that matter of member governments, would have fallen precipitously low to 47%, recognizing to at one point that member governments were funding as much as 90% of the operations of the UWI entities. This is significantly below the minimum threshold that was established 2 decades ago. I believe it was 60%. And I believe that on the point of principle that there needs to be some rebalancing to get the contribution of governments certainly above 50% to ensure the continued stability and survivability of the institution. To do otherwise is to literally invite ignorance at the expense of enlightenment. And today I remind us all of the same, that if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. Let me add here that if we fail to increase our ambition and commitment to adequately fund UWI to ensure its competitiveness and contemporary relevance, governments may find themselves in the future subsidizing mediocrity instead of funding excellence. So I'm saying that to say that we should not be penny wise and pound foolish by indiscriminately slashing UWI's budgets, or governments slashing their contributions, because ultimately, if UWI is not adequately funded, then the institution will not be able to grow and to develop to meet the needs of the region, and we'll find ourselves inadvertently subsidizing mediocrity instead of funding excellence. And I believe we have come too far in our development to allow ignorance to undermine enlightenment and progress. And I want to make a clarion call for all of us to strengthen our commitment to ensure the sustainability of UWI. While I would have made a case for increased funding commitment from member governments, the reverse is also true, in the sense that our struggling governments should not be funding the folly of inefficiency. And not I'm saying that UWI is inefficient, but we have to guard against inefficiencies, and there's always room to improve efficiency, but we have to guard against funding inefficiency. Therefore, I call upon the leadership of the various UWI entities to continue to realign and to strengthen UWI's governance framework to ensure continued relevance with national and regional priorities, while increasing efficiency to ensure financial sustainability. I certainly endorse the Revenue Revolution strategic plan and the other alignments and realignments, as well as the various revenue generating initiatives, which are important in pursuance of the national and regional strategic priorities, and to generate supplemental income for the UWI entities so as to reduce or eliminate the recurring unsustainable deficits. I think we have to make an extra push now to ensure that UWI's finances become sustainable in order to maintain the strength of the university and to ensure that it remains relevant in delivering the intellectual development that is needed for the continued advancement of the region. I also wish to reiterate my previous call for increased entrepreneurship and to remind us of the strategies that we discussed at the last meeting to improve the revenue base of the UE entities. So in as much as I would have made the case for member governments to increase their commitments and to ensure that those commitments are honored on a timely basis, UE also has to help itself by becoming more entrepreneurial and to explore various avenues to increase its revenue base. And some of the discussions that we engaged in previously included the creation, for example, of a unit trust and possibly a trust fund similar to the Caribbean Court of Justice. And I believe just as how justice is important, education is even more important. In fact, building the capital base of our region is even more important, necessitating the type of collaboration among member states for us to possibly establish a trust fund in order to ensure sustainability of UE going forward in the future. I'm also of the view too that UE has to become a little more aggressive in pursuing private sector grants and endowments. We'd also discussed previously the creation of a real estate investment trust in which governments could provide land or land grants for the development of real estate projects, especially residential real estate products, in satisfaction of the strong demand that we have within the region for climate resilient housing. And I believe too that even the UE alumni could be pursued, not only to be homeowners, for example, but also to invest in such a trust. My government will also support the proposition for a regional tax, let's say 1% on imports, for example, which could go towards sustaining our human resource development within the region. So some form of automaticity of funding, I believe, is necessary for UE as the most significant institution within our Caribbean family, Caribbean family, or Caribbean for that matter. And I also believe too that governments could also take the lead of Antigua and Barbuda, in which we implemented a 10% tax on corporate profits to fund UE5 Islands, and that is what has helped us to maintain UE5 Islands. So that's one of the areas in which governments can look at, and certainly for the large economies, it doesn't have to be 10%. It could be a fraction of 10%, which can provide additional revenues to assist governments to meet their financial obligations. So, I'll be very succinct, and in literally concluding, I'd say here that the above are just a few possibilities that could be pursued as we aggressively explore and pursue various avenues for revenue generation. And I'll add here that we should not be daunted by the challenges, but we must continue to focus on developing effective strategies to address the main drivers of the recurring deficits, to include the unfunded pension liability, and certainly the impairments and the overwhelming large government receivables. And I'm hoping that one of the outcomes of this meeting would be the, let's say, a plan for various governments to reduce their outstanding payables to UE, and that at the same time, we can find creative ways to address the issue of the unfunded pension liability. I also want to thank the staff too for their magnanimity in addressing the issue of the unfunded pension liability as we seek to find a sustaining solution. So finally, despite these challenges, I remain absolutely optimistic about the future sustainability of UE as the quintessential institution in integration and certainly the advancement of our Caribbean civilization. So, colleagues, those are my initial opening remarks, and as we seek to efficaciously dispense of the business of this meeting, I want to move swiftly in inviting Professor Sir Hilary Beckles, our Vice Chancellor, to make his remarks.
That we cannot rest on our laurels. We have to be very aggressively future focused and looking towards the centenary. What will this university look like? What will be its reputation? What will be the stakeholders' response to its service as it approaches the centenary? So all of those issues have occupied our mind and the senior management team, the campuses across the region. This is how we have sought to balance and to prepare our university for the future. Yes, the post-COVID situation, no doubt we had to fight that circumstance that represented an existential threat to our university. No doubt, if we had closed down our institution to manage this COVID migration in the way that many other universities did, it would have posed a threat to our institution's survival. We did not do that. We went into a deep dive management. We embraced our students. We took full advantage of the technology available to us, and we were able to see our students through their programs despite all of the difficulties. And we have seen cohorts of students graduating. Those universities around the world that did close their doors to students, sent them home, shut down their operations, are now spending billions of dollars to re-establish their legitimacy and to regain operational efficiency. We did not do that. We got in there, we established our task force, we met with our students, and we were commended internationally for being one of the universities that best managed this COVID circumstance. And we are very proud of that because that was our collective endeavor. We have constantly been looking at how best to balance the pursuit of the reputation revolution of our university to make sure that on all of the fronts by which universities are ranked, that our performance has been high, and we have tried to convert that reputation, which we have now established globally as one of the top-ranked universities in the world, how to convert that undoubted reputation now into revenue to help to sustain our operations. So now we are a global player. We are now expected to perform with respect to that reputation, and I will make a few comments about that as I proceed. But in fact, we have had to harness the UE system into one UE vision so that we operate like a missile going through space and time, focus, bringing our 5 campuses together into a focused missile for future trajectories. And we have been able to successfully do that because all of our campus principals and all of our campus administrators, they recognize the need for this at this moment. So one unique vision, one unique practice with all of the reputational and revenue aspects that you can expect to follow from that perspective. Many of you would have been following the evolution of UTV, which is across the region providing educational services to our communities. UTV is a joint venture between our institution and Flow. And I want you to imagine the resource investment in kind that Flow would have made to enable you to develop a cable TV station right across our CARICOM region. And really must give commendation to Janet Kuru, who has been the master planner and leader of UTV. And now we are going to be operating in Guyana. We're going to be operating in Belize. Last week in Barbados, arrangements were signed with the government of Panama. So UTV will now be operational in Panama. So not just the island Caribbean, but the Caribbean continental rim. This is quite remarkable that we are going to be able to reach 20 million people across the region with UTV providing that education. I wish to express our gratitude to the Open Society Foundation, who made a grant of $700,000 US dollars to enable the university to provide global leadership and research around reparatory justice. And here we also have Salisis contracted to do financial research on the state of condition of all of our regional economies. And this project is to enable Digicel to make its continued investment in how the region look at its future preparations for greater efficiency. And a good grant here from Bridget Friedman, who discovered that she was an intellectual inheritor and a family inheritor of the wealth generated by slavery through her ancestors, and as part of her personal reparatory justice, she made an investment grant of her will of $500,000 US as her contribution. So the conversations, we have been mobilizing the conversations no matter how we can to ensure that our conversations are not just intellectual, but that they generate revenue and bring in income so that everything that comes out of UWI, we now expect it to be self-sustaining. Chairman mentioned the issues of the deficit drivers from time to time, and as you know at UGC, we have been concerned for many years that there are these processes, the unfunded pension liability, the government receivables and the impairment of those receivables. Normally our balance sheet will look quite satisfactory. From time to time, when we consolidate at the end of the year, the balance sheet of the university would look good, but then you would read in the newspaper that we have the deficit. And the deficit primarily is driven by these issues, the unfunded pension liability, the government receivables and the impairments of that. And these are the things that are beyond our control. Mr. Chairman, I want to emphasize these issues are outside of the control of management. And so when we integrate these forces into our balance sheets and then we see the deficit, it is extremely upsetting to us that despite effective and efficient management that is yielding a good balance sheet, these issues, when they impact, they change our circumstance. So what would normally be a small positive balance on the sheet then suddenly becomes a negative balance on the sheet. And this is something that I know UGC has asked us to address, and we are working on this. We had meetings last week on the pension unfunded liability issues, and we are hoping to now begin the process very, very shortly of engaging our unions on pension reform. And as you know, colleagues, pension reform is a very complex and tricky matter that requires very elegant and sophisticated negotiations, and this is where we are now to begin that conversation. Despite our efforts with our auditors to proceed more gently in relation to the impairments, we have not been successful, and this continues to be a major issue for us, the impairment of the government receivables. As these receivables age, more aggressively the auditors become. But nonetheless, we believe that we are in a good position from that point of view, that we have been managing our expenditures, we have been focusing on income, and the balance sheet is looking reasonably well once we can suppress and extract these matters that are like a cloud over our heads. And then you can see the last year or so in review on the left, you will see how we have been reducing expenditure and containing costs. We've been bringing the costs down. We've been taking measures to reduce those expenditures, Mr. Chairman. Oftentimes when positions become vacant, we freeze them and we find ways to do occupational reform, to spread the work. We find ways in which to share services between the campuses, therefore cutting costs again. And we have found multiple ways. This is always in front of us. How do we continue year in by year out to reduce the expenditure system of the university? And on the right-hand side, how can we aggressively pursue even more revenues. And if you look there over the last 3 to 4 years, you can see where we have gone with this externally funded projects. Now, Chairman, colleagues, as you know, the governments of the region are effectively funding an undergraduate university. It's a teaching and learning facility. It is not funded as a research-driven university. But to become a first-class university, you have to have significant research. So the onus over the decades, the onus has been on management to find those resources to drive and invest in the research of the university. And so this is something which is so critical, not only for the region to have first-class research, but also for the institution to be respected globally as competitive. And you can see there that in the last couple of years, we have been able to raise significant sums of money externally in order to fund research. And these are all dedicated funds. We cannot use these funds for other activity other than for the research of the university. And in the last financial year, we were able to generate 66 million Barbados dollars, which is 33 million US. We brought that in through the efforts of the faculties, the campuses, the principals, my own office, to get those resources to facilitate our self-help agenda in the area of research. And we will continue this, as you say, Chairman, because we need these resources, we need these funds, we need to have research done effectively, and the onus is on us to find those revenues, and we leave no stone unturned. This, of course, means that we have to be out there in the global space. And you cannot step out there in the global space unless you have a reputation where the doors are open to you. And UWI has positioned itself quite satisfactorily. All of our distinguished professors, our campus principals, my own officers, we have been able to position UWI in such a place that when we knock on the doors and we ask for support, the doors are open to us. And over the last 2 years, we have been working on the transformation of the open campus into the global campus. And one of the projects that we have developed to do so is to establish the International School for Development Justice. This is an international business school that is focused in the global campus. And it has one mandate, it has one agenda, this international school. It is dedicated to the Sustainable Development Goals. It will be offering online taught master's degrees. Online taught master's degrees only on the 17 Sustainable Goals. And we are the only university in the world that has a school, an international school, dedicated exclusively to teaching, learning, and the transformation of research into pedagogy on the SDGs. And at the bottom there, you can see a meeting with Secretary General of the UN, Guterres, to share with him the UWI strategy. And this is where he visited with us. We shared with him the strategy of our university, and we were commended for stepping out into the global world. The UWI out there in the world, the only school that is focused on the SDGs exclusively. And here we are, some of the programs that we are going to be offering, come the new academic year to the world. And I really wish to thank the IDB for coming to our support. When we went to Washington 2 years ago to present this project to the IDB, again, the door was open to us. They were extremely impressed with our vision, our strategy, a school for the SDGs. And the image here is in Washington on the 6th of March, signing that financial agreement. Look at what we, the Caribbean people, have done. So we thank you for your small endowment. We appreciate it, but look what we, the people of the Caribbean, has achieved through our own collective self-help. And as Prime Minister Browne says, this is our intergenerational gift to ourselves, and we have achieved this because our sovereign states of the region have focused on building out from this small school a major international university. Not to be outdone, we received visits from kings and queens. There's a group in Africa, an association of royal families, some of the traditional kings and queens, and a large group of them came out to visit the UWI to reconnect to the people who were brought out from Africa in chains. So these royal families have come out to reconnect and to reaffirm their commitment to a free, liberal, Pan-African vision. And this was very significant because, of course, many of our students or young people have never been exposed to African royal families, and this meant a great deal to them by way of education. And all of this international context gave us the authority, the confidence to declare UWI a multilingual university in the last year. All students entering the UWI are now expected to acquire communication proficiency in a non-English language. All students. Our students of the future will now be graduating as multilingual students with mobility regionally and globally. They have dozens of languages to choose from. They can choose African languages, they can choose European languages, Asian languages. They are now free to choose languages so that they could build out their future for themselves and for this region. All of this continues to move towards the elevation of our rankings. As you heard, our commitment is always to be in the top 5% of the best universities in the world. That's where we have always been. Universities outside of the global south are spending millions of dollars to improve the global rankings of their university. Universities are now popping up all over the world, focusing on their rankings. And here we are in the top, certainly number one in the Caribbean, and the top 1% of all the 2,000 universities in Latin America and the Caribbean. When we first entered the rankings, there were 30,000 universities in the world. Now there are 32,000 universities in the world. The number continues to grow, and we are always in the top 5%, 1, 2, 3, but we are in that 5% despite the significant growth of other universities in other continents. So we look into the future and future focus. I will share with you, colleagues, that because of our reputation and our well-known impact, we've had a number of countries in CARICOM and beyond seeking to become contributing countries. We are in negotiations with the government of Haiti, wishes to become a contributing country, and of course the government of Colombia have invited us to establish a university presence in Colombia, and we have heard from the government of Guyana that they wish to work with us in developing the medical and engineering school. So this is all very important to us, that we will do what we can and do what we must. And colleagues, the year in review has been quite seismic and transformational, and I think we are in a much better place today than we were a year ago. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Vice Chancellor, for your very comprehensive report. And I certainly want to thank you for your leadership. Evidently, UWI has come a long way, as you said, from 31,000 students to 50,000 today.
No, 31, Chairman.
31 students to
31,
50,000.
that's where we started.
Yeah, 31 students to 50,000 today.
Yes.
Correct. In fact, my late step-grandmother was part of that cohort of 31 students. So my family has a history dating back decades with UWI.
Yeah, there you go.
So you can certainly identify with that growth to the extent that you moved from 31 students to 50,000. So again, well done, and your leadership and reparations as well is well known, yourself and other members of the UE faculty. So we thank you and the faculty for your distinguished leadership in expanding the global reputation of UE as a celebrated university today. And we recognize the challenges, as I said before, to include the unfunded pension liability and others, the receivables from governments. We recognize that the unfunded pension liability, is not as a result of your doing, but it is something that we have to address as soon as possible. I certainly want to commend you and the team for the establishment of the International School for the Environmental Justice as you focus on the SDGs, because ultimately that is the focus of practically all countries within our community to achieve the SDGs as soon as possible, hopefully within the upcoming decade. And as you know, Antigua and Barbuda will be hosting the 4th CITES conference and will be providing leadership as we seek to ensure that CITES globally will achieve these SDGs within the next 10 years. You spoke about the need for UE to expand its research capabilities. We do accept that. And that is an area in which perhaps there needs to be additional focus and commitment for funding to ensure that UE continues to be a globally recognized university that will deliver for the people of the region. Just to state in passing that we held discussions recently with Harvard, the president of Harvard and others, or the senior leadership of Harvard, and they are certainly interested in further strengthening the partnership between Harvard and UE. So as we continue to partner with various institutions globally, Harvard has indicated its interest, they value the relationship, and they're certainly committed to strengthening the partnership between UE and Harvard. Certainly want to commend you and your team as well for reducing expenditure. From what I've seen, expenditure during the last 5 years would have been reduced by about 117 million Barbados dollars. And we note your efforts as well to increase revenues. I note that, for example, that revenues have increased by more than 50%, by 26 million to 66 million as at the end of 2023. So again, a commendable effort as you seek to raise supplemental revenue to cover your budget deficits. And of course, the various programs that you spoke about, including digitalization, they're certainly very important. You also spoke about the expansion of UE 5 Islands. I believe that they'll be going to tender very shortly to select a contractor, and we believe that by about third quarter this year, construction for the expansion of UE 5 Islands will commence. And again, it's showing that UE is actually expanding its presence here in Antigua and Barbuda. So again, I thank you and your team, the entire faculty of and the leadership, the Chancellor, you Vice Chancellor, for your leadership. And we look forward to our institution going from strength to strength as it continues to develop the human resources of the region.